We are moving to the topic of Bizeolcat socio-economic impact assessment. We have connected already Dr. Trond Halvorsen.
Yes, hello.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you.
We are glad to hear you. A few words about Dr. Halvorsen. He is a research scientist at SINTEF Digital, Department of Technology Management, and he obtained a PhD degree in economics from the Norwegian School of Economics. He is a member of Norwegian Evaluation Association, the American Economic Association, and the National Cluster for Co-Creative Service Design and Innovation in Healthcare. In the Bizeolcat project, he was a work package coordinator for work package 5, sustainability, safety and social assessment, and carried out a social economic impact assessment. His research is focused on job creation and economic value added from investing in and operating plants based on technologies from Bizeolcat project. I'll leave you present to our audience expected social economic impacts on the Bizeolcat project on European Neighbourhood Policy countries.
And also to the speakers that were before me, this very nice seminar today. Yeah, so as you said, I will now present the results from about the expected socioeconomic impacts of the Bizeolcat project, focusing on the European Neighbourhood Policy countries. And as you correctly stated, this is part of work package on the sustainability, safety, and social assessments. This is one of those tasks in that work package. So now we're moving up in scale. This is a different level of evaluation than what we have heard before, but it connects very well with the techno-economic impact, the techno-economic studies that we have seen. The main objective of this task was to define the social character of the technology, where we take into account the precepts of the sustainable development and the impact that can be delivered into the social context and communities. And then I could say that the work was divided in 3 parts. We started out with a baseline study where we characterize the current situation. So this is like a ex-ante evaluation. And next we went into the impact assessment where we estimated the potential impact of all the 3 different Bizeolcat processes. And the final task was to develop guidelines for establishing viable operations in the European Neighbourhood Policy countries. And the idea there was that for commercialization of the technologies, we might have set up a joint venture, and we might want to market the technology in these countries if it was relevant. And this work, it was not only carried out by myself. I have good colleagues here at SINTEF, and we also had great help from the National Institute of Chemistry in Slovenia. So what are the European Neighbourhood Policy countries, and why should we focus on them? So the European Neighbourhood Policy, it was meant to foster, or is still meant to foster collaboration between the EU and its immediate neighbours. So the idea is that the European Union, to succeed, it should also benefit the neighbors. We should not be seen as a fortress Europe. And we also need to be very active to both seek collaborations that are mutually beneficial, and also illustrate how research financed by the EU is helping our neighbors. On the map, you can see the various countries colored in different colors. And the policy countries, neighborhood policy countries, are split in 2 groups. The green ones are called the European Partnership Program. And to the south, you have the orange color, which is referred to the Mediterranean Partnership Program. And this policy has been developing since it was established, and there are separate agreements for each of these 2 groups of countries. The dark blue countries, of course, they are representing the EU, and the lighter blue are the candidate countries. But as you can see, there are very big differences in the kind of countries that we're talking about, from Eastern Europe or Northern Africa, and also Israel, and then towards the Middle East here. So that was the challenge, how to tackle this this question. What kind of impact can we have for these countries? Given the scope of the questions that was asked, we also needed to have a relevant evaluation framework. So we identified the OECD Development Assistance Committee evaluation criteria. And this is a framework that was set up to evaluate the impact of the development economics programs towards poorer countries. But it is flexible enough to be used in our research and for our purposes. So the core of this setup is that you have the blue figures. And if I can get that pointer. What we have done is we described the objective as the same as the objective as for the Bizeolcat project, where we wanted to reduce the cost of reactor designs. We wanted to decrease energy usage, especially fossil fuels, and also the climate emissions. But what's reminded to be done is to connect these objectives to the needs of the countries that we were looking at. The inputs that we're talking about is the new innovative reactor designs and also the innovative catalysts. And the activities is the running the plants to develop the alkenes that we are talking about, and also aromatics. So the products that we are producing constitutes the output, and then you have the profits of the company as outcomes. So what we are interested in are the criteria that are in yellow, such as the impact. What impact does it have on countries, the regions, local communities, even the workers working in the factories? So within the setup, other work packages are looking at very much on the efficiency of the catalyst and the reactor designs. So I didn't have to focus so much about efficiency. And the effectiveness is whether this process actually works. Is also taking care of about the technical work packages. But for the impact assessment, we designed the macroeconomic model, which I will go much more into detail about now. This will be the core of my presentation. But we also did a lot of interviews and document studies, as well as a field study to assess the relevancy of the objectives to the needs of the countries, and in what degree it was coherent to the countries. So coherence is about whether the countries are positioned in a way that they can actually utilize the technologies. So in terms of economic structure, but also in terms of culture, resources, educational level, everything that can see whether there is a good match between the economies of the country and also the technology we propose. And finally, the sustainability criteria is about the long-term, whether you can uphold the impact that we are identified, and whether the impact actually addresses the needs. But for the remaining of the presentation, I will now focus on the impact criteria, and I will talk about the input-output model that we designed and used for this assessment. So here is a illustration of how the input-output model looks like. This kind of setup is called a social accountability matrix, SAM. And this is derived from national accounts data. So if I look at to the right side here, we have the output of each industry defined by a number of industries. And the sum of all the outputs is the GDP of a country. So these statistics for the European countries, it's all given out by Eurostat. And also for the European Neighbourhood Policy countries, Eurostat has some of the data, but sometimes we have to collect it from each individual country's statistical bureau. What is interesting about these tables is that for each industry, we don't not only know the aggregated output, but we also know which industry they are selling to. So there is a matrix of various industries, and you can see how much each one is buying from each other. So that's why we call it the input-output analysis. So for our assessment, we stipulated an increase in the refining industry of a specific country, and then we can track how the increase in the activity of the refining industry had a ripple effects to other industries, such as transportation or electricity or security or any other sector in the country. So then you will find that the direct effects of the investment or the operation of a plant, but through these ripple effects, you also find the sum of the indirect effects. So it's not only one step where you have one supplier from one industry to the other, but yeah, the countries are then affected. Not only the countries, but the industries are then affecting each other in many steps. So for this kind of assessment, we need the data from national accounts, and that was one of the challenges that we met. That not all of the European Neighbourhood Policy countries do have as good data as European countries. And also the aggregation of industries varied between the countries. But we did have some nice results to show you also. So here are the distribution of ripple effects in the southern countries of Tunisia and Morocco. They were comparable both in the aggregation of the industries and also the time of the year of the data. And so by putting in our data from the preliminary techno-economic analysis, we found that the sectors that were most likely to be affected are the coke and refined petroleum industries, as well as the mining and the extraction of energy producing products. And so these are countries that have gas fields, and they also have active refining industries. And they behave very similarly, and they're affected similarly. When you have the three columns to represent the three different Bizeolcat technologies, from propane dehydrogenation, butane dehydrogenation, and the propane aromatization. So the distribution in percentages are equal. It's just the difference is just the amount of investments that are made here. But I wanted to show you each of the technologies just to see that the level of investment is quite different. Now this is if they should represent North African energy producing countries, we have a comparable graph for Ukraine, and we find that as I said, for Morocco and Tunisia, you had the coke and refined petroleum products, and also mining and extraction of energy products that were affected. But in comparison, in Ukraine, the largest impact is expected to be on the wholesale and retail trade, as well as extraction of oil and the transportation sectors. So of course, in Ukraine, they do have some gas deposits themselves, but a lot of the energy that they're used or is part of their economy, it was imported from Russia. And then, of course, you are very much aware of what's going on there. The situation changed completely in the last year. And these data are, of course, not reflecting then the current war. So this is another challenge that the world is continuously developing. We do have similar results for Azerbaijan and Belarus and all the other countries, but there are some differences, as I said, in terms of how up-to-date these tables are. So then what we decided to do is we wanted to look at what it would be the impact of these countries if you built a new propane dehydrogenation route inside Spain. So now we're moving to the case that we are investing in a European country, and we were wondering what would be the effects for our neighbors. And what we find then is almost 90 to 100% of the direct and indirect effects of both the investment phase, the capital expenditures, and the operation expenditures, it will occur in the same country. So the model does not, I will show you the results, but there are very limited ripple effects towards the neighborhood countries. What we were able to do, because the Eurostat data are really nice, we could see that the increase in economic value added and job creation, we can calculate it per sector, and we can estimate the distribution of jobs that are created according to the gender and skill level. And here we should note that this is based on the preliminary economics study, so they're not updated with the most recent figures. And the reason for that is that the final techno-economic study was released at the end of the project. So here are some of the results. As I said, this is under assumption that we build a plant in Spain. And for the capital expenditures, so this left side is representing investment phase, and the right side is representing the operation phase for a propane dehydrogenation plant. So we find there is economic value added to the extent of 460 million euros. And what you can see is that the impacts on Germany, France, USA, China, rest of world, and the other countries are quite low. And we are not able to say that they are statistically different from zero. It could be just a feature of the model that turns out that there are some values here. And it's the same is reflected in the operation phase, that the workers and the industry that providing resources according to the model all occur in Spain. So what we are missing is the import of raw materials from African countries or other countries. And then if we want to break the impact in value added into sectors, we see that the largest impact in the investment phase goes to the other manufacturing sector, where you have repairs and installation of machinery and equipment. We also have a lot of increase in the machinery and equipment sectors, and wholesale and retail trade, as well as the repair of motor vehicles is included in that sector. Then moving after the investment phase, if you go into the operation phase, we see that the mining and extraction of energy producing products is quite big. So presumptively, the model seems to think that Spain will be able to produce their own the gas that they needed for themselves. There's a big question about that. Transportation and storage is another sector that we see a big impact in. And then moving into job creation, we find that the jobs that will be created is more likely to be in this light blue column here. So they will be representing non-skilled male workers within Spain. So they are the group that were likely to benefit the most, as well as skilled males, and then skilled females and non-skilled females. And here we see that China is coming up on the list. So that in terms of machinery and equipment, probably that they are delivering some equipment to the investment phase. In the operation phase, the colors are a bit different. I'm sorry for that, but as we see the same pattern where you have non-skilled males as the biggest group and skilled males as the second largest group benefiting from the operation phase. And we can also do the job creation by sector. So where are these jobs created? And we can see that for the investment phase, you have other manufacturing, the repair and installation of machinery and equipment, as well as the production of the machinery and equipment itself as benefiting a lot. And then going over to the operation phase, we see that the mining and extraction of energy producing products, as well as other business sector services, are the ones that are highly impacted. We see that we also get some impact on more human resource sectors, such as human health and social work. We have the electricity, gas, and water supply services, as well as financial and insurance activities that are part of the mix. And of course, this distribution of job creation, it also reflects where the value creation is happening, pretty much the same sectors. So the results I've shown you right now, it's for the propane dehydrogenation plants, but we repeated the process for butane dehydrogenation and for propane aromatization. And so to summarizing, about you might or might not be interested in the numbers because they are not really reflected the final techno-economic assessment, but we have calculated numbers both for the investment phase as well as the operation phase. Again, we see that the scale of the numbers is maybe more interesting, that the propane aromatization requires much less investments and such. So the outcome is also much smaller. And then if you summarize this and you want to remember just one number from the whole presentation, we can say that the ratio of increased value added to the total investment of all Bizeolcat technologies is this 1.25. So I mean, yeah. And then for the operation expenses, here you see the ratio is on average is 1.24, so it's quite similar. And what this means is that every euro you spend on these technologies, it is likely to result in a value added for the global value chain that is increased by 1.25 euros. So there will be like 25% extra economic value added to the world economy. And I think I can stop here because I was running a bit quickly now. Maybe I'm also catching up some time for the conference. So thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to answer questions. And if you want, I can also talk about the impacts that we've looked at from the interview sections. Yes.
Well, the thanks are for you. And yes, we do have some questions, some open questions from our online audience. How new refining capacity can make changes to local communities?
Okay. Yeah, that is a good question. So I don't know if I can bring up the screen again. It might be helpful. So in terms of relevancy and also the relevancy of the needs, it means that. Excuse me. Am I still sharing the screen or not? No.
The screen is not visible yet.
No. Okay. Anyway, I'll answer without the screen. So we did a lot of interviews and also a field study to Cairo to talk to petrochemical representatives. And it's very clear that refineries can act as a hub for change in the local communities, both for good and for worse. One concrete example is we saw in Israel in the Haifa Bay area, where the refineries are consistently on the top 10 list of most polluting countries, companies in the country. So any kind of improvement in the sustainability of these companies will also increase the sustainability of their customers. And we see that there's a big youth movement, in particularly in the young populations of Northern Africa, that are working for change, and they want to have a greener and more sustainable production of anything actually in their lives. So if you consider that synthetic rubbers and plastics and all the aromatics are such an integrated part of our lives, it would be very nice to see these technologies are put into the market and put to real use. I don't know if, yeah, if that was good enough answer, but
I think this covers the the question. Yes, before moving forward, I would like to ensure that yes, a question from the room.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm not in the field, but it was very interesting. I have just a question. Do you have any number about the job creation per, let's say, euro invested in these new technologies?
And I'm not. We haven't done a very detailed analysis of that. I mean, what you can do is try to do some back of the envelope calculation in terms of salaries of the country, or how many thousands of euro, and then see, okay, if you do 80% of that, you should have invested so much to get that extra 25 to add up to the total of job creation. But we haven't done that particularly, no.
Okay, because I have seen some statistics, and for chemical industry, the creation of new jobs is, as a percentage of the total investment, is low, because most of the cost is for the capex and opex, and there are only few highly skilled personnel, while there are many workers also. So this is it's not in balance in general.
Yes. No, and another challenge that I didn't talk so much about is that in our market, for Bizeolcat market analysis in the work package 6 is a different work package. We see that, of course, the biggest markets for these technologies are not necessarily in the European Neighbourhood Policy countries. They are in other regions such as Southeast Asia, or in the Middle East, or even in Russia. So. So that is why we have to look at the relevancy of the technology compared to the, like you said, the availability of workers with the right skills and all this. So this is in our qualitative assessment. That was I didn't want to include here to crowd the number of slides, but it's absolutely part of the study that we are maybe not the most relevant for European or the neighborhood policy countries. So the region that we were decided to look at is ended up not being the most interesting one, but we know that in hindsight. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the discussion.
And thank you for your question.
Thank you to our audience for the question, and first of all, thanks to you for the result of your research, and a round of applause.
Thank you so much.